This is a KLFY News 10 weather alert, brought to you by the Jim Olivier family of companies.
I want to give you an update on Hurricane Ida. I've been tracking this storm off and on through the evening hours and also through the day today. Emerging into the Gulf yesterday and eventually gaining strength through the morning and through the afternoon hours over some of the deepest part of the Gulf earlier today. Kind of took its time getting its act together, but we've seen that strengthening beginning to happen earlier this afternoon. An eye wall developing and an eye developing earlier today. As that has happened, the pressures have dropped, and as that happens, we've seen the winds really pick up as well. I expect that trend to continue overnight tonight and through much of the day tomorrow. Unfortunately, not a whole lot to stop this storm. You can also notice some really good outflow from this storm. That will continue, so as the air rises for these storms to grow, we need to have that air vacate the top of the storm. That trend has continued. However, there's some subtle changes that might benefit us here in Acadiana. One of those is the motion of this storm is more off to the north-northwest than the west-northwest. The other thing we've noticed over the past really 4 or 5 hours, the center of circulation actually has been to the north of the official forecast track from the National Hurricane Center. So what does that mean for us here across Acadiana? It appears, I don't know if this is a hiccup or more of a trend, time will tell, but it appears that this storm is going to take more of an easterly path and potentially hug the eastern cone of uncertainty from the National Hurricane Center. So greater impacts potentially across Baton Rouge and New Orleans, lesser impacts for us here in Acadiana. That's not set in stone, but that seems to be the trend we've seen over the past 4 or 5 hours. Here's the latest from the National Hurricane Center, the 4 p.m. update. Winds are now up from 100 miles per hour, only at 105. Movement, again, is key, and it is going at a pretty good clip at 16 miles per hour. Movement off to the northwest at 16 miles per hour. Here's what we think is going to happen. We'll kind of step you through the forecast. By early tomorrow morning, beginning to approach the southeastern part of our state, eventually making landfall. Looks like the timing on this early tomorrow afternoon through about mid-afternoon, depending on exactly where it makes landfall, potentially as a Category 4 storm, and then eventually moving inland from there. It will slow down considerably and eventually scoot up and out across the mid-Atlantic, bring pretty good rains across parts of the mid-Atlantic as well. Looks like landfall again, once again, across the southeastern part of our state, probably Terrebonne Parish. At this point, that's the way it looks. All the computer models now becoming in better agreement and shifting a little bit further to the east. So that's certainly good news for us. That black line right there is the official forecast track from the National Hurricane Center. Fairly steady, but we've seen a little bit of a nudge further to the east. Let's hope that trend will continue as we work through the overnight hours and through much of the day tomorrow, at least the morning hours tomorrow. Here are all the watches and warnings. Obviously a hurricane warning for much of Acadiana, minus some of our far western parishes. Obviously they're under a tropical storm warning. Again, really what's going to make the difference is probably 50 to 75 miles. A swing either way, west or east. Further to the west, we're going to see greater impacts. Further to the east, our impacts will be limited as we work through the day tomorrow. We'll step you through the forecast as far as future track goes. I think for the most part, we're pretty clear overnight tonight and through much of the day tomorrow. As we wind into tomorrow, late morning through the early afternoon, you see some of these outer bands of Ida beginning to make their way on shore. This actual model has slowed down. Timing on this making landfall is tomorrow night. I think that will speed up a little bit, but don't pay attention to that. What I really want you to focus on is the actual center of circulation and also the western side of the storm, not as potent as the eastern side. So that's certainly something to watch as we work through the day tomorrow, because that obviously is where we're going to be on the western side of the storm. So here's what we're thinking at this point. As far as impacts here on Acadiana, we'll obviously have to kind of fine-tune these and get these dialed in overnight tonight. But the wind threat, 40 to 60 miles per hour with higher gusts, especially the further east you live. The further east you live, you're going to see higher and stronger winds. The further west, obviously you're going to dial that back. Flash flooding, not really a huge threat, I think, with this system. 3 to 6 inches area-wide. Could see 8+ inches in some locations. And the coastal storm surge, I think, is decreasing somewhat, but obviously we're going to be dealing with a storm surge across much of the southeastern part of our state as we work through the day tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening as well. So that is the latest on Ida. We'll be tracking it through the afternoon. Join us coming up at 6 o'clock for your latest forecast.